Hey guys, I wanted to pop up a video today to talk about Tyler and I's TTC journey. If you don't know what TTC means, it is trying to conceive, and this is kind of our story so far. Starting out in October of 2018, which was over a year ago, I went off of birth control. I kind of in that September, I had just decided that I was done taking synthetic medication. I wanted to be as natural as possible. And I've kind of shifted my mindset in a lot of things in my life to a more natural perspective anyway, as far as like deodorants and shampoos and food that I eat and just kind of in general, everything that I've been using, I've been transitioning into a more natural product. And I'm doing that as I run out of the synthetic and the harsh chemicals in my life in our home that I have started kind of just every time I buy something new, I usually try to buy something that is more natural, healthier for you, that kind of stuff. So that all started kind of taking shape in my mind in September of 2018 of last year. And so I had said something to Tyler about how I didn't want to take birth control anymore and why, and he completely understood because he's very understanding of pretty much anything I want to do ever. And so we kind of talked about, well, what about babies? Like, what about if we're not really ready to have a kid yet? Blah blah blah. And I agreed at the time. We had said that we wanted to be married for a year, and we had just hit that year mark. And so we had wanted to stay. Just us for at least a year at the at minimum. Oh my gosh! And so when October rolled around and I took my last birth control pill, I had my first cycle off of birth control. It was fine. Everything was normal, and we had just decided that we would be taking precautions to try and prevent pregnancy. At a minimum, we weren't really preventing, but we obviously weren't trying. I bought OPKs, which are ovulation predictor kits. That after my period ended, I started testing for ovulation just to be sure, and it was just going to be one of those things that we abstained sexually during my ovulation, like fertile window, and that was kind of how we were going to play it, so that we didn't have to worry about he having to use protection or me having to use some kind of birth control, that kind of stuff. And that just was what was more comfortable for me and him as a more natural approach to preventing pregnancy as much as we could. And that kind of stuck through Christmas time. And at New Year's, he and I went on a cruise with my in-laws. And we just kind of started talking about like when we'd want to have children and when that kind of was something we wanted to start doing. And he just mentioned, he was like, I think I'm ready to start trying. And I've wanted to have kids my whole life. So I've been like, you tell me when you're ready and we'll start right now. And that's just kind of how it's been because I've always wanted children. And so we started talking about trying and all of that. And at this point, so I went off birth control at the beginning of October of 2018. And by beginning of January, so New Year's time of 2018/2019, I still had yet to have another period, which isn't completely abnormal for somebody who's just gone off of birth control, because your body is still trying to kind of regulate, and typically most people don't have a period for a couple months, or they don't have a normal cycle for a couple months. And so I wasn't super alarmed about it at the time. What was alarming to me was a little bit of the fact that I hadn't gotten a positive OPK, positive ovulation test, which wasn't that big of a deal, because if I'm not having a cycle, then I can't really ovulate, and that was fine. But then like end of January came and I still hadn't had a cycle. I still hadn't had a positive ovulation test, and I was testing like every day to every other day. I went through a lot of OPKs. And so my husband and my mom and my best friend just kind of convinced me that I probably needed to go see a gynecologist. So I made an appointment, and so I went the end of February to my doctor, and he said that there wasn't a whole lot that he could do, but we could do some blood tests. He wanted to do a blood panel just to see where we're at. And so I did that. I had a blood panel done. I obviously had to do like a pregnancy test and that kind of stuff to see if I was pregnant, which we all knew that wasn't going to be the case because I had taken a few pregnancy tests at home, just like, okay, months and months and months of not having a period, like I'm going to take a pregnancy test, make sure I'm not pregnant kind of thing. And so I went in and had my blood panel, and my blood panel looked perfect. Everything was perfect. Like so much so that my GP told me that my blood work should not be what it was for how overweight I am. And so like it was weird. Like she was like, your blood should not look like this. Your blood counts should be way different. And so she was like, well, you need to start taking better care of your body, even though your blood work's good. Your body is not okay, so you need to start working on that, blah, blah, blah. And then my gynecologist, that's kind of when he was a little bit more concerned, was that since all of my blood work came back normal, it didn't make sense why I was having the issues that I was having, especially since I had lots of other symptoms. And that about that point is when I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is, if you don't know, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And PCOS has lots of different symptoms, and it affects everyone completely differently. So for me, mine was extreme weight gain, unexplained, unexpected, and unable to get rid of. So it doesn't matter how much I work out, how much I diet. It has no barrier on it. I continue to gain weight no matter what. And in fact, the more that I exercise, the more weight that I gain, the faster I gain it, which doesn't make any sense. And that's pretty common with PCOS. And then I also began to get facial hair, which I've never had an issue with in my life. Right here, right around my mustache area. And at first I was just like, okay, maybe it's just like a hormonal thing because I've gone off birth control, but it's really pretty common in PCOS patients. And then acne. I have never had acne in my life, ever. Like, even as a teenager, when you should have lots of acne, I never had it. It was ridiculous. And so I get it really bad around my face, right here, right where the mustache grows in, and then I get it on my nose, and then sometimes over here on my temples. And that's usually it. I don't get it anywhere else, but I get it there all the time. And then, of course, I don't have a cycle. And so at that point, my doctor had recommended that we force a period because it's not healthy to not bleed. And so he prescribed a medicine called Provera, which is a synthetic progesterone, which I'm not very happy that I have to take. But at the same time, it's healthier for me to take the synthetic medication and have a period than deal with the possible outcome of not having a period and what that can do to your body. And so I willingly took it, even though I was a little frustrated because it's not natural at all. It's very difficult and almost impossible to get a natural form of progesterone because it's a hormone, and the only way to get it is to get from like other humans or animal progesterone, and that's not much better than synthetic progesterone. So I just have to take it. And so I took 10 pills, so one each day for 10 days, and then about 3 days later started a period. Because what progesterone does is when you take synthetic medication, it's basically a form of birth control. And what happens is after you stop taking it, your body goes through what's called withdrawal, just like you withdraw from drugs or alcohol or anything like that. It makes your body's like, oh, maybe if I bleed, then I will get this hormone again, because it's withdrawing from the fact that it no longer has that hormone in your body. And so, and that's how it was when I was actually on the pill for years. I always started my period 3 days after I stopped taking it. So 3 days after my third week, when it was the placebo week, which I never took the placebo pill because it's just a sugar pill and who needs more sugar in their body. But I never had issues remembering to take my pills. And so I always started my last pill would be on Sunday, and then my last pill would be on Saturday, and then I always started on like Tuesday or Wednesday, almost like no matter what, always. And so I wasn't super surprised that it was 3 days after. But that was in my first period was in April. So I had a period in October from getting off of birth control, and then I had another one in April from the synthetic progesterone. And in that entire span of like 6 months, November, December, January, February, March, April, 6 months, I can't count. I didn't have any ovulation at all, none. And then, so I started that period then, and he told me that there wasn't a lot that he could do because insurance doesn't cover anything unless you have been trying for a year. And so even though we officially really started trying in December, January time, he could count October because that was when I stopped taking precautions to getting pregnant. And so that could count as toward my year. So we actually got a couple months extra that we could take off of having to wait for insurance because I had stopped trying to prevent pregnancy a few months earlier. So in July of 2019, I started my blog that I've been writing kind of about the emotional journey, the medical journey of everything that's been happening since a year ago in October. And it's been quite healing, actually. I was very nervous to kind of pour my heart out for people who really don't care about me as much as most people, like some people do. And so to be so open about such a taboo topic and to openly express how I am struggling mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically through this entire journey in just a year was very difficult at first, and now it's like very rewarding. So if you are struggling, I highly, highly recommend being open with people around you. It really changed the way that people talk to me about pregnancy and the way that people talk to me about trying to have children and when I'm going to have children. And if you're struggling to conceive, you understand what I'm saying, and the fact of people are very, very invasive in their questions about when are you going to start trying, when are you going to have a child, blah, 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 blah. We're ready for grandkids. We're ready for you to have kids. I want to be an aunt and uncle, like all that kind of stuff. That people don't realize is very devastating to somebody who is silently traveling the journey of infertility. And so the more open I've been about our journey and our path that we've been on, the kinder that comments have gotten and the more supported I have felt in being quote unquote infertile at this time and emotionally struggling to accept that that is kind of the journey that we had to be on. So that started in July, and I have written a post, I think once a month, and there have been so many rewarding comments, and I've met so many people, and it's just been so extremely just uplifting in hearing other people's stories that I didn't know had struggled with this, and them supporting us on our journey in it as well. So that's been really cool. So then come September, my doctor had told me back in April when he had induced that period that we could probably start a month early so that we could start some of the like blood work and testing and start a period and that kind of thing, because sometimes insurance will support a month early, which I mean, what is one more month? Like seriously, I don't understand. But so we did that, and so I had an appointment on September 19th where Tyler actually got to go in with me, and we did a quick recap of the last year, and he prescribed a progesterone medication, that Provera, again, so that I could induce a period. So I've had 2 periods since last October, 2 periods in a year, and both of them have been synthetically induced. And then Tyler was given a prescription for a semen analysis because our doctor said that with me having to go through all of the crap that I have to go through, we have to test him as well. And so he finally got to become a part of the journey more than just being sexually active with me and trying to have kids and like that kind of stuff. But he like had to induce some testing for himself. And that was surprisingly really uplifting as well, because it wasn't just my problem, it was our problem now, where it was, let's make sure that you're okay. And even if everything comes out fine for him, like, I'm not going to be one of those people. I don't think that will be, well, it's all my fault, like, I can't have kids, it's my fault you can't have a child. Just because he is very supportive in this journey. But it was just very rewarding to have to see him do something other than just sit there and hear me complain about how crappy my body is. And so we did that. He actually just did that this week. It is November 2nd, so he just did that this week. And we're waiting on the results. We don't know when we'll get them. And then in this past month, I have had what's called an HSG and a histosalpingogram that tests to see if there's any blockage in your fallopian tubes, and that everything kind of endometrial looks okay. That's kind of where, if I understand it correctly, people who are diagnosed with endometriosis, they get that diagnosis often through an HSG, because you can kind of see if there's any buildup in the uterus and that kind of stuff, or scar tissue or anything like that. And then so I had that done early October. It was like the 10th or the 11th, because you have to have it on the 10th day of your cycle, and I had started my period on the 2nd. So I had it done on the 11th, and unfortunately, my radiologist from HSG thought that he saw some abnormalities in the shape of my uterus. So, like, everything looked great on my HSG, as far as there was no blockage or anything, which was a super, goodness gracious, super huge blessing, because I was fully expectant that there would be, and there wasn't. So that was good. And so the negative thing was that he saw what could be a T-shaped uterus, which is not so good. A T-shaped uterus means that it's exactly what it sounds like. It's shaped like a T. And typically people with T-shaped uteri have harder trouble getting pregnant and staying pregnant, because it's just not a very viable place to house a fetus. And so typically they miscarry pretty early. It's just a very hostile type of environment that does not, it is not conducive to a growing child. So that was kind of worrisome. And so my doctor then scheduled me for an MRI. So the day I was getting an MRI actually was my 21st day of that month, or of that cycle. And so on the 21st day, I had to get a progesterone test, a blood test, to see if I had ovulated that month, which I knew that I wouldn't. My doctor pretty much knew that I wouldn't, but he still has to test for it. And so I went in and I had to get blood work to test my creatinine, which is my kidney function, to see if my kidneys are working properly, to clean out the contrast that I was going to have to use for my MRI. And then I also had to get a blood test for my progesterone. So that was all out of one IV. Well, then, or one blood draw. Then when I went in for my MRI, I had to have an IV, because I had to do 30 minutes of, or roughly 30 minutes of an MRI with no contrast, and then like 10 to 15 of with contrast. So I had to have an IV so that she could shoot contrast into my bloodstream. And so that day I came out with 3 pinpricks, or 3 pinholes, because one of the spots was not viable for an IV, and had like an hour MRI, which was fine. It wasn't like, it was not uncomfortable or anything. It was just kind of, you aren't allowed to move. So for like an hour, I had to be as completely still as possible, which is very difficult for me. If you can't tell, I move a lot. And so that was the 22nd, October 22nd, which was last week, like a week ago. Last week, I don't know, like almost 2 weeks ago. And so I got the MRI results for that the next day, because my hospital has what's called the My Health app, and so I can see all of the radiology reports and all of that kind of stuff. Actually, I think I read it that night. I had the results for my MRI, and then I didn't get my progesterone until the next day. And then so my doctor called and said that my MRI looked great. There was no abnormalities, no anomalies, nothing. He didn't know what about that HSG thought that, or in the radiologist, how he thought that my uterus was T-shaped and why the x-ray from the HSG looked that way, but my MRI came back perfect. which was a huge blessing because I was fully expectant that it wouldn't. Which is another testament to how I've been really negative through a lot of this journey, and there have been so many blessings and positivities coming out of it that I need to just stop being negative because I am wrong every time. And then got a phone call that my progesterone was low. It was actually less than 2 or less than 0.2, which is so low that the test couldn't actually test what my number was. So it was very, very low. And so I was prescribed letrozole, which is an ovulation medication. It is used also for people with breast cancer to lower estrogen and raise progesterone, which is really helpful with people going through breast cancer. So it can also help prevent breast cancer, which is pretty awesome. As I was reading my little leaflet information thing that I got yesterday when I picked it up. But then I also had to get another Provera prescription because you cannot take letrozole without being at the beginning of your cycle. So the way letrozole works is you take it days 3 through 7. So you take 5 days worth of letrozole pills, and you take that on day 3 of your period through day 7 of your period. Or like just of that cycle. So even if I stop bleeding on day 5, I still take 2 more days worth of letrozole, which should force my body to ovulate. So I will be updating you as far as if I've ovulated this month and those kinds of things as we kind of go along the rest of this journey. I have recorded lots and lots of videos in the past, like 2 months, where Tyler was like, "You should start a vlog." And so I guess this is kind of me officially starting it and just letting you become a part of our journey and traveling this difficult road with us. This very, very heartbreaking but rewarding journey. And I just hope that you stop by and you continue to come back and follow this journey with us. And if you are also struggling with infertility or been diagnosed with PCOS or a T-shaped uterus or you don't ovulate or any of those things, I want you to know that I am here to support you as well. And the more people that I have had come reach out to me about their struggles, the more comforted I have felt. So if you are out there, just know that you are not alone. And there are people who are rooting for you and your family, and I am one of them. And if you ever need anything, please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. And I guess I probably should introduce myself. My name is Sydney Dungy, and my husband Tyler and I are in the works of trying to start our family. And we hope you'll join us for this journey and travel with us as we try to have a baby. This is Sutton, and then Rommel is asleep on the floor, which you'll probably see him in future videos. But I thank you for stopping by. I hope you come back. Have a great day.